Welcome back to another Startup Junkies podcast. Thank you so much for joining us, whether you are listening, watching us. We appreciate it. Be sure to like, subscribe, do all that fun stuff so you can catch up with the Startup Junkies team weekly. We appreciate it. My name is Davis McEntire. I'm podcast co-host on here with my co-host Jeff Amerine, Victoria Dickerson. How you guys doing?
Doing great.
Glad to be here.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, I'm honored to introduce our guest today, Amy Keever of Amy Keever Art Galleries. How you doing, Amy?
I'm great. I'm so glad to be here.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, tell us a little bit about your gallery.
Okay. Well, I'm predominantly a sculptor. So I sculpt in polystyrene, which is a little bit different of a medium. Fine art mosaics have to be done with something that's lightweight but durable. And so I put fiberglass and concrete, and then I put thousands of hand-cut pieces of stained glass. So lots of cuts, both on the glass and myself. So
I can imagine.
So I have a line of all my large sculpts, and then I do some paintings, and then I have a jewelry line that I work with.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, yeah, talk to us about the origin story. How'd you get to opening your own art gallery? You know, what was kind of the journey there?
Yeah, I mean, I did art for years. I was kind of like that art kid, like, you know, what do we do with her, you know? So I was working at a bank, and I was staying up till 3 o'clock in the morning and doing mosaics and going to work and exhausted, you know? And so one day someone called the bank, and it was for the secretary, and I picked up the line, and she said, I'm a mosaic artist, and someone's told me there's a mosaic artist there, and I'm trying to find her. So I was like, okay. And then 2 weeks later, land that I had been paying on and working for, I sold, and I opened up my first gallery in 2012. So I have done mosaics pretty much since my son was 4 months old, and he's about 22. So
Wow.
yeah.
So a long time.
Long time. Yeah, he was a little baby, and I'd have to put him all the way across the table to not flip a piece of glass at him. And my daughter was 4.5, so yeah, challenges. But it was what I was born to do, for sure. Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit about that intersection between being a business owner and being an artist, and how you manage that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a growth curve for sure, because my first gallery was 2012, and then I came to Salon and opened a gallery in 2020, and then moved to Bentonville in last year, 2021. So that has been a huge gap, I think, to find that happy medium of, you know, an artist that does commission work at home versus someone who's trying to manage a full gallery. I think as artists, we like to just sit around and do glass and do what we love. But I've had a lot of great mentors that have come in my life to bring resources, and I think that's something I prayed for from the get-go. So,
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
That's great. Right before you came in, you were talking about how, you know, whenever you start doing art or whatever your small business is, you expect to just do that, but then you find yourself having to do the admin and the marketing and all these little fine details. So how do you find yourself balancing that on top of the artwork that you already do?
Right. And I think I didn't balance it well. You know, I think it's a day-to-day interaction with that. So I have just hired a virtual assistant to help me with some social media, but I think I had to get, you know, as a small business owner, you don't have that boss to tell you, hey, this is how you have to do this. So setting up systems was a big deal for me. I kind of have a vision book that I keep the whole year's worth of goals and everything. And so I just have to set my own boundaries with things that maybe, okay, set 2 hours aside for admin versus 2 hours for being able to, because I have to kind of break down the 3 mediums as well. And so I'll have so much time that I can devote to a large sculpt versus the jewelry. We just had a couture gala where we released a new line. And so my focus had to kind of shift and make adjustments for that. So.
Gotcha.
And is the gallery all of your own stuff, or any plan in the future to include other artists' work, or what's your thought?
I mean, I really think from the get-go, my vision was to be able to have a gallery where I am able to highlight young artists. I've had a mentor program since I was in Texas, and so every other month I highlight young artists and pick some from the community, and so that's really close to my heart. But the vision has always been to be able to opened it up to the public. It's one of the few working studios in Northwest Arkansas. And so I have private hours that I can go and do some messier work Monday through Wednesday. And then I have clients that want to come as a concierge service through those days. Yeah.
I got it. And they can actually watch you go through the process as part of all that. So in some ways it's an experience business.
Absolutely.
They become part of the, at least by not participating, but by visualizing what you're doing.
Definitely.
They can see the techniques.
Definitely. And I think my client tends to definitely be that woman that wants to have an experience with the art. It tickles me because I'll say, where did you get your shoes? Oh, I was in Italy and I had this sweet little artist that I got to know. Everyone that really is drawn to my art, that is their story. It's almost like a photograph of their trip or their memory. So it's not just about what the art piece is. It's just something that they can kind of hold on to and recall that moment.
As you think about your customers or your patrons, what does that ideal customer look like? I mean, I'm sure it's a broad spectrum of people, but talk a little bit about the customer persona.
Well, Seth Godin says, to find your smallest viable audience and take care of them, and that's what I feel like I've really tried to do is take care of that tribe. And I would probably describe them as someone like me, very audacious. My friend who's a minimalist said, "Can't you do some things for the minimalists?" I said, "Does this look like the girl that can do this?" So. Yes, someone I think who's very expressive through their own art. I mean, as far as art is an experience for them, their jewelry, they're all about. I feel like I have two main clients, and one is, later in life that's had world experiences and is now a full collector, versus maybe the younger version of her who is trying to find her true identity and yet knows herself very well and is able to just express herself freely and more out there than the typical girl maybe.
And I would imagine at this point your following is far beyond just Northwest Arkansas. Do you have people kind of coming in from all over that are aware of what you're doing?
It is. So I used to service private clients with just commission work. And now that I've done large sculpture work, it really has expanded to corporations. And I was featured at the Gaylord Texan and Grapevine, Texas, which is
it's a big
beautiful
deal.
place. It was a really great experience. They chose 10 artists and 300,000 people saw the piece by the end of the year.
Wow.
And I was going to be with them for the 4th year when COVID struck. So it's been a really great experience, and I can't say enough about being a part of that for sure.
Very cool.
Well, that's amazing. Yeah, Amy, so how you talked to us a little bit about, working your regular job, then going home, doing art, doing sculptures. And I can definitely kind of relate to that, where I've got this creative side to me. So like I want to go, for me, it's like photography or something, have this little creative outlet, but get that stuff done. How does that, as you've taken the jump into becoming, a full-time gallery owner, is that kind of the same? I guess your work is the creativity, side of it. So kind of speak to that. Is it a good blend, or does it kind of feel like work at times? How does it work?
I think when you have a passion like that, it's really hard you'll do anything to keep that. It's to me, I've always said my dream is like a baby, and it's my job to protect the baby. So if that's not good for the baby, I'm a mother of 2, and so it's just that kind of thought. Some things with motherhood would not be fun. Changing diapers are not fun, but it is to me so comparable because it's just there's no plan B for me. This is what I was designed to do. And like I said, I didn't have a lot of creative outlets around me as far as resources, so I know that it came from within. So there are some things, yes, that are not fun, but I know that they get me to my end goals. So it's just necessary.
Yeah, very well put.
Yeah.
That's great. So as a creative and just anybody who has a small business or a dream, you hit those dry ruts.
Right.
Where, like what you said, changing diapers is not fun, but it's necessary. So what is your motivation or your passion? What do you do to kind of refuel your creative side? Can you speak on that a little bit?
Absolutely. There's a book called The Artist's Way, and she talks about having an artist date, and it's where and someone who's not an artist might think, okay, whatever, but it's about making a date with yourself with an artistic way. I have 2 children's books that I've written, and I'm wanting to illustrate them in glass, which will have to be huge mosaics to bring the details down. So one of my artist dates was to go to the library and look up illustrators, and it's fun. It's really a neat thing to do for anyone, whether you're an accountant or whatever your passion is, to be able to you do have to keep feeding that creativity. So, and I study leaders as far as the business side. I love reading books. I mean, my one friend said, "Oh, not another book," because I'm always saying, I know a good book about that. So watching their life from a business standpoint has helped me so much to be able, John Maxwell, so many, D.D. Jakes, so many good business people that have really impacted my life and been mentors, whether they knew it or not. So, yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, thank you.
The Arkansas Inc. podcast provides an in-depth look at the latest industry trends in Arkansas from decision makers, business leaders, and executives. The Arkansas Inc. podcast has focused on a range of business and economic development topics, including small business and entrepreneurship, international business, fintech, workforce development, and community development. Each episode, which are about 30 minutes long, features business leaders and subject matter experts in conversation with knowledgeable members of the AEDC team. Recent guests have included Governor Asa Hutchinson, UAMS Chancellor Dr. Cam Patterson, Conductor Managing Director Dr. Jeff Standridge, and representatives from companies including Amazon, Walmart, IBM, Ozark Integrated Circuits, and more. The goal of the podcast is to help provide more information about Arkansas and its strong business environment to help business owners and executives make the decision to move to or expand in Arkansas. The Arkansas Inc. podcast is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and other podcast apps. Just search for Arkansas Inc. To learn more or subscribe to Arkansas Inc. podcast, visit arkansasedc.com/podcast.
It's kind of good advice for anybody, right? Is specifically setting time aside to go do something you're passionate about or dive into. That's great advice.
Absolutely.
I love that. Yeah.
I feel like when I talk to my young kids that come, I'm like, you can't give this up. I mean, everybody has to have that one thing that drives them, and I really do feel like Brene Brown says that creativity that's left alone metastasizes. And I really do love that comment, because if you don't go with what you're creatively born to do, there's a part of you that just dies. So it's very important for a creative person to stay creative, Yeah.
Absolutely.
Sorry.
So these young artists that come through your program and that you mentor and help teach them, what would you say is one of the most important things that you feel you have to offer them, and two, one of the biggest takeaways that you've seen consistently just impacts them?
Yeah, I used to teach ESL, and I always said I wasn't necessarily the most academic teacher, but I could motivate a kid. And so if I can, I think so much with life is about validation. If you can just say, hey, you're valid just as you are, what you're doing, that's a huge thing to be able to conquer, because they need to be able to see, okay. And I think another part that makes that consistent is to say, don't figure out the how. I've done so many years of worry and anxiety of how am I going to do this? And it's really, to me, a higher power that makes that happen. And so you just have to stay true to the work. And my biggest thing with my art is to stay authentic. You have to do what's authentic to you. You can't be what Stephen Pressfield would say is a hack, and just become what's trendy. And that's very hard. And they need mentors to say, this is going to, you're going to have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And so that's my best advice, is to be able to just stay true to your heart. And again, someone who's maybe not a creative might think that's, a little out there, but it's so true. It's so true.
It's really good advice for startups in general.
Yeah, absolutely.
Being genuine and authentic and being comfortable with being uncomfortable is fundamental.
Absolutely. I can't remember her name, but the lady that did It Cosmetics, she had this chance of a lifetime to go on QVC, and they had told her she had rosacea, and they had told her, don't go on like that. You need to get models that are seasoned, and she was so nervous, and she was just like, this is my one chance. I have 10 minutes to sell like 100,000 products. And she just went with her gut, and it absolutely changed the culture and everything. I mean, it was the only thing that really kept her going.
Sure.
So, yeah, it's big.
You've done all this great work. You've got the gallery. You've got a big following. So what comes next? What's the vision? What do you
What's
want it
the
to be?
vision?
What's winning look like?
Absolutely. You know, I really want I always want my art to be of hope and something that is that can be a foundation for people to grow. I of course want to be able to do the biggest, tallest, widest mosaic I could ever do. But I also want to bring in good teams. I want to really form good teams where I can be able to give back in a bigger way than what I am right now. And so I think to have that foundation would be really important to me to be able, as we grow, if we're doing more boutiques, if we're doing more wholesale accounts, just to be able to grow a strong team that everybody feels like they're inclusive.
Gotcha. That's great.
You want to land the plane?
Is it time to land the plane? We're gonna have to come up with a new cliche. It doesn't always. We have to.
It's been about 300 episodes.
We have to. We have to finish the piece at
There
this
you
point.
go.
How about that?
There you
It's
go.
time to finish
I
the
like
piece.
that. I like that.
Art spin on it.
So
That last piece of glass. That's right.
exactly. This is the
Right.
last piece of glass that's
That's
going
right.
to perfection. So
Absolutely.
the last Jolly Rancher in that giant $7 million
There you
display
go.
at
There you go.
Crystal Bridges, which you can really. By the way, and a slight aside, you could really freak out of town visitors when you just walk by and pick up a handful of those,
you go.
and they know it's something you're not supposed to do that
Yeah.
at this kind of place. It's like, no, it's okay. So,
Yeah, I didn't pick one up either.
you didn't. I did. I was just like,
I was like,
people were
this
looking
is a
at me like,
trick.
where's security?
Yeah, this is a trick.
Anyway.
There's a docent that's going to be right behind me. I'm just sure of it.
This is kind of a bizarre question that we ask every time, and some people have had some really kind of funny answers to it. But given all that accumulated wisdom, the experience you've had, and everything, all that knowledge, if you could get in a time machine and go back to your younger self,
Oh, wow.
what advice would you give your younger self?
It's a hot seat question.
Great question. It
it's
needs
hard.
a breath, you know.
Yeah.
Brene says, I like breathers because they kind of go. That's something to really think about. I think I would say to just be true to myself. I was a people pleaser from the get-go as a young woman, and I wasted so much time trying to make people happy and trying to not have a boundary where I should have. And so it might not be artistic in my answer, but I would totally just be true to myself and not feel like I had to validate myself to the rest of the world to be able to go forward in what I'm doing. Because it's definitely when something, The Alchemist, it talks about, when you're going to be able to do something, the world conspires to help you. And so I totally believe in that. I totally believe that that's true.
Great advice.
Thank you.
Great advice.
I do have one last question before we kind of
The second final question.
That's right. Here's
I
another piece of
apologize.
glass.
Another piece of glass.
That's right.
What kind of advice do you have for any aspiring artists that kind of want to break out of their normal job or kind of go full time and want to do a gallery type setup like you have? What's some of the best advice you can give, or what's some of the pitfalls that maybe they can avoid?
Right.
Anything like that?
Right. I think it's really important who you share your dream with. You know, it's dangerous. It's, again, that whole baby thing. That's probably an analogy that I use a lot. But you have to be, there's a lot of people that haven't done their dream, and so they're going to maybe be a dream killer. Or they might love you and they just, out of the goodness, are scared for you. And, this does take a lot of constant leaps of having, Seth Godin says, if you didn't feel like an imposter, you'd be a psychopath, because this hasn't been done before. So
true. I
I think the biggest thing is to know without a shadow of a doubt you're going to get there. And if someone doesn't have something, constructive criticism is great, but if it comes with an agenda, it's dangerous. And so to be able to, when I first started writing goals, you have to write your goals down. And artists probably, I'm not speaking for all of us, they probably don't like that. But I just had to say to myself, I'm going to write bad goals before I write good ones, and so get comfortable with that and knowing. Like I say, I have a vision book that I keep the whole year where I can reference back and measure, test and measure what you've done, because you're going to be doing more than you think you are. So be able to have that recall that you can look back and be able to say, oh, okay, and celebrate those wins,
Yeah, that's great.
It's kind of an interesting concept too, is writing bad goals before
Yeah.
you can get to the good ones. Because I've been through classes and have a professor come in and say, bring back a goal That's, it's a SMART goal, right? Specific, measurable, time-oriented, reasonable, all the actionable. I hope that's the right.
It
I
is.
hope that's the right acronym.
You got most of it. You're about an A- level there.
I would say Smarty because you add that I for incentive.
Probably closer to a B student, which I am. But anyways, I would have terribly hard times coming up with, a goal that fit all those, metrics as well. But writing, just still getting them down.
Right.
And then,
Yeah.
it's
So
a practice,
important.
honestly,
Absolutely.
to get to the good ones. I really like that concept.
Yeah, and at
It's
the
very
same
usable.
point for bad goals is bad art. I think a
Yeah.
lot of artists get tripped up because they want it to look a certain way.
Right.
And I'll get this quote wrong, but I heard someone say, it's your vision for what it needs to look like is what you should have comfort in. But because you can't see it there yet, then you get tripped up, and some people quit before, don't quit. Because there's nothing going to be gained. I mean, you'll never,
Most things that are worth doing end up being a process of iteration.
they're
You
failure
can't-
after failure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And a pathway to eventually having something pretty good.
Yeah, it's all, you cannot do it without failing, which is really just a redirection.
For sure.
Yeah.
If our audience wants to find out more about your gallery or you, what's the best way for them to connect?
Okay, so my website's amykeever.com, or you can do amykeevergallery.com. Instagram, Amy Keever Gallery, Facebook as well. So,
Thanks for coming on.
thanks
Yeah,
for
thank
having me.
And congrats on all your success.
Thank you
we
so
look
much.
forward to you having something that is gigantic,
Audacious.
and world renowned.
There
So
you go.
congrats on all your success.
Thank you so much.
The Startup Junkie podcast reaches over 100 countries and has had over 100,000 downloads. If you're interested in reaching some of the most motivated and engaged innovators and entrepreneurs on a worldwide basis, give us a shout.